Ezekiel chapter 7. It's amazing. I've had this thing on. I don't even think about turning it on. We don't have such technology where I come from. So Ezekiel 7, again, we are, it's worth reminding ourselves, we are in the section of Ezekiel that is dominated by judgment. So every week it's going to sound the same. God is going to judge Israel. Judah in particular, Jerusalem is going to be the heart of it. And so Ezekiel is already in captivity. So he is in Babylon. And we saw that in chapter 1. And after his calling, we've seen the condemnation of Jerusalem. And so we are seeing that here. They're going to rebuke the land now. In order to understand this chapter, and really just this section in general, there is a theological concept the ancient Israel had that is worth exploring briefly. And that is what is known as the see, it sounds like bachelorette over there. Inviolability of Zion. I can say it in my head, it's just my tongue can't do it. What we mean is the ancient Israelites believed that because of the Abrahamic and Davidic covenant, God would never let Judah fall. He would never let Jerusalem be sacked, the temple destroyed, and the line of David end. That was a theological conviction. And so Ezekiel is suggesting, particularly in this chapter and beyond, it's exactly what God is going to let happen. And so even though Israel knew that they were breaking the covenant and whatnot, there was always this fail-safe that no matter how bad it gets, God will always protect us. We will continue to exist. And Ezekiel comes and suggests otherwise. I'd actually like to give you an example of this. If you want to turn there, you can. You don't have to. It's Psalm 46. I really just want to read it just to give you an example of this. You can see it when you're looking for it, but we don't look for it normally because we don't have this worldview embedded in us. So it's Psalm 46. You'll recognize some of this. Verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present and help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes war cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow, shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. You can see the language here is that we have nothing to fear. Now, this is true in light of the Davidic covenant and the Mosaic covenant and the Abrahamic covenant, but it was premised on obedience to the Lord would mean the propagation of Israel. So they would continue. But disobedience, the Lord warned them exactly what would happen. Everything we've seen so far is Ezekiel is picking up on the imagery and language of Leviticus and Deuteronomy and saying that what Moses warned, you will be the generation to experience. It is because you have violated the will of God. So with that said, chapter 7, not a long chapter, longer than last week, it's broken down into 3 parts. And the nice thing is that the Bible breaks it down for us. Let me show you what I mean here. Look at the end of verse 4. It says, then you will know that I am the Lord. Okay? You can go down to verse 9, the very end. What does it say there? Then you will know that I am the Lord who strikes. But still, you got the same phrase. And then finally, you can go down to verse 27, which says, I will judge them and they will know that I am the Lord. So then you can see that this passage is already divided for us. We don't have to be creative in what is being communicated. It's already divided. So with that, let's look at the first section, and that is judgment announced, verses 1 to 4. So we'll start there in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, and you, O son of man, thus says the Lord God to the land of Israel, the end has come upon the four corners of the land. Now the end is upon you, and I will send my anger upon you. I will judge you according to your ways, and I will punish you for all your abominations. My eye will not spare you, nor will I have pity, but I will punish you for your ways. While your abominations are in your midst, then you will know that I am the Lord. So, as Lane mentioned earlier, last week we saw that Ezekiel speaks to the mountains. Here, verse 1, he speaks to the land. And notice the announcement is quite simple. The end. It's like a really good Looney Tunes cartoon, ain't it? It's just, okay, it's the end. This is it. No more. In fact, notice the repetition, an end, the end. Now, this would be shocking language for Ezekiel's readers. For one, the inviolability of Zion, but also because this echoes a previous prophet that we call Amos. So Amos writes, "And the Lord said to me, the end has come upon my people Israel. I will never again pass by them. The songs of the temple shall become wailings in that day, declares the Lord God. So many dead bodies, they are thrown everywhere. Silence." So Ezekiel is saying that the generations before me warned that this was going to come. I'm telling you, it is arriving right now. The end is nigh. The end has come. And what he describes here is a complete destruction and end of Israel. Now, on the one hand, we need to understand this is hyperbole or hyperbole for you Owen-Countians. That is to say that he's implying that everyone's going to die, everything's going to be destroyed, there's no hope. But last week we saw, in the middle of the judgment section, Ezekiel lets people know that actually God will preserve a remnant. And that is the pattern of God when it comes to Israel, is that there's always a remnant that he preserves as his elect people. And Ezekiel would be considered among that remnant. But there will be some who survive this terrible event. But the point still remains, God is against his people, and his judgment will look complete. If you were to survey the land after Babylon was done, you would just see smoke, rotting bodies, torn down buildings that were once beautiful and powerful, a destroyed wall, an almost completely empty city, and you would think this is complete destruction. Well, it is worth noting here the tense in which this is written. Look again there in verse 2. The end has come. In verse 3, now the end is upon you. I will send my anger upon you. I will judge. Now, I don't know if you're a Nazi or not, but that is bad English. So if you're writing a paper, which I know now that we're all out of school, we tend to do this, to bounce around your tenses is really bad writing. If you're going to write in the past tense, keep writing in the past. You're going to write in the present, write in the present. You're going to write future, write in the future. Just be consistent. Here we see all three tenses. And rightly so. This is good Hebrew prophecy. What the Hebrew prophets like to do is to speak of future events in the past tense. So the Lord has come upon you is in the past. But it's a future event still. It's imminent, but it's still future. But the reason the prophets do this is because it speaks of certainty. It will happen, and you can bank on it to the point we can speak of it as if it has happened, or even that it's happening right now. This is sometimes called the prophetic perfect. And you see there he describes the four corners of the land. So I will... or the end has come upon the four corners of the land. Now, this phrase is used in various contexts. Sometimes it describes the four corners of a table or of a floor or of a building. It can mean the four corners of the earth. You're probably familiar with this. He will raise a signal for the nations and will gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Revelation does this. I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth. This does not mean that the earth is flat. I don't care what your crazy cousin says on Facebook. I can quote Bible verses too, but the point here is it's the four corners of Israel. Does that mean Israel is a perfect rectangle? No. The point is whether you look northeast, south, or west, danger is coming. You cannot escape what is about to happen to them. And now verse 3 and 4 tells us the reasons for this judgment. Notice one word sticks out. It is the word abomination. The end of verse 3, I will punish you for all your abominations. And then in verse 4, I will punish you for your ways while your abominations are in your midst. Clearly, the repetition is to emphasize that this is the main point. Why is God judging Israel? It is because she is guilty of abominations. And that is one of those Bible words we throw around, and we often use it as a weapon, but we never really think about what does the Bible categorize as an abomination. So I do think it's a generic term. I also think it can be a specific term for wickedness at the highest level. But what kind of wickedness? Let me give you just three categories, and all of these really come into play, I think, in Israel. The first is that the Bible describes idols as being abominable. So Deuteronomy 27 says, cursed be the man who makes a carved image, an abomination to the Lord, and all the people shall say amen. So notice here that the graven image itself is an abomination. Now, this, you think, okay, well, it's just a block of wood that, you sing songs to it and offer, food to it every once in a while. It's not that big of a deal. When actually that simple graven image and the theology worldview behind it lies at the root of all the abominations that come from it. If you did not have that right there, you wouldn't have everything else we'll see. And what we'll see makes sense as abominations, but we're soft when it comes to worship. But this is the real crux of the issue. 1 Kings 11, Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So it's interesting. The wisest of fools is Solomon, isn't he? And he was wise until he tolerated false gods. And one of those gods he tolerated is described as an abomination. This god and its practices in particular are labeled as an abomination. I also think there's parallelism in there. Anyways, so idolatry is abominable. Then there are specific ritual abominations. So you have idolatry. What comes with that are abominable acts. Now, you would not have these acts without the idol itself. So if you get rid of the idol, all the other stuff will go away. But once you introduce it, what comes with it? Let's look at Deuteronomy 18. When you come into the land, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. Notice that their idols are abominable. The practices associated in ritual worship are themselves abominable. What are they? There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or daughter as an offering. This is child sacrifice, infanticide. And this is the thing. We'll look at another example. This is the thing that really just sets things off in the Old Testament. That you would offer your gods to Molech or whatever. If only I can think of a contemporary example. Anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes. And what do we do in this nation? This right here is going through the roof. Or interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a medium, or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. So you have the offering of your children as part of ritual practices, and then you have the dark arts, if you will, as part of an abominable act. You do not bring this stuff in at all. It's demonic. All of it is demonic. For whoever does these things is an abomination. Now notice here, the practices are abominable. Do not learn to follow the abominable practices. But then it is whoever does these things is abominable before the Lord. Yeah, Don. Yeah. Breaking this cycle of demonic activity takes generations. Yeah. And he goes on, because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. So now notice here that Israel's going to enter into Canaan, who are already doing these abominable acts. So God's going to cleanse the land like a flood, like the flood. But now instead of cleansing the land of the Canaanite and their abominable practices, Israel has taken upon themselves these abominable acts. What is the appropriate response from God? The land has to be cleansed. But in order to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. You just got to tear it all down and rebuild. So God is going to wash the land yet again. He's going to preserve that remnant, much like the story of Noah. But once it's washed and cleansed, then a generation will come in. And they are to break these sort of acts. Let me give you another example under this, that idolatry and ritual practices can be abominable. He made offerings in the valley of the son of Hinnom. I don't know how to highlight that word. Burned his sons as offerings according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. Any idea the valley of Hinnom? Any idea what that is called in the New Testament? Say it again. Close. It's translated hell in the New Testament. Do you know the Greek word? It's the valley of Gehenna. So the word Jesus uses predominantly in the New Testament for hell is not our word hell. The underworld where there's, fire and brimstone and all that sort of stuff. It's an actual valley. So he warns that there's weeping and gnashing in the valley of Gehenna. This is the valley of Gehenna, where it was where the people of Israel offered their sons and daughters to pagan deities. And it had become so desecrated that it become a garbage dump and all that sort of stuff. So you have this constant flame, and Jesus uses that as a metaphor for eternal judgments. And it traces its lineage right here. Yeah.
Is that, I'm not very good exactly, is that close to the place, the gates of hell?
I think it's closer to Jerusalem. I'm not sure. You could probably Google it, and it may even be in the back of your Bibles. I think it's pretty close to Jerusalem, but there's a good chance I'm wrong on that. Someone's going to look that up and correct me, no doubt. But so when we think of abominations, we think of moral abominations, and we're going there. But we need to begin here, that at its root of abomination is idolatry and what comes from it. So it's worship, it's the practices, and then it's the lifestyle. And this is where we get to moral abominations. Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. Now, I've cut it off there because it goes farther. But this is usually the verse that we reference, isn't it? When we use this word. Now, what is the context of this? Again, Israel is to be different in every way. And so you don't practice these things because you trace that practice to paganism, basically. Let's look at another example of this. Proverbs 17, he who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. So what do you get here? You get confusion of what the body is for. So if pagan acts murder children, pagan acts will engage in sexual activity that do not create children. That makes sense. And they will pervert justice. This is what paganism does. And that is abominable, that you pervert justice. That the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer. Here is a good summary of it. Proverbs 6, there are 7 things that are an abomination to God. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. And that's a good list, isn't it? Maybe one of these days we'll do a whole series on that. But that's a good summary. Now, what we want to do, this is what legalists want to do, is we start here in Proverbs 6 or Leviticus and say, okay, you do these things, you're abominable. When theologically we say those are the result of worship. If you get worship right, don't worry about this stuff. But if you get worship wrong, this is the path it's going to take you. If you study ancient world religions, they all look the same. In fact, they borrow each other's gods all the time. And that's not an accident. False worship will express itself in the same way once it becomes unchecked. Children will be murdered, marriage and sexuality will be confused, and justice will be corrupted, and you get the daily behavior of humans is shameful. This is what's abominable to the Lord. And this is why we need repentance. So the point of all this is that God's judgment against Israel is not arbitrary, it is just. In fact, what we see here, God is judging them for their abominations and by their abominations. Both are true, or both are important. That is, that God's judgments are both active and passive. In fact, I've long argued that we are under the passive judgment of God in the West. If you don't believe me, our population will be dropping really, really fast. You better hope robots and AI can solve that problem for us. Because enjoy your Social Security, we millennials will be the first that won't. Enjoy it. Yeah, you can say, well, the government's stealing the money. Yeah, but when Social Security started, you had like 10 people working for one retiree. Now it's like one person working for one retiree. It ain't going to work. Ain't going to work. Why? Population. Well, we're killing kids, and we're not having kids. Boy, that sounds familiar as something we may have just read, doesn't it? And what happens is that when wickedness reigns, it will eat itself from the inside. You will just destroy yourself. And that's kind of what we're doing now. We are in late stage empire. We are following the same patterns of all the empires before us. And it's not good. There's still hope, still repentance, and still revival, all that, but it doesn't look good. You read this list, and you're like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound like my neighbor. It kind of sounds like me. But this does describe most of us, doesn't it, as Americans? This is no big deal. False witness who breathe out lies. Anyone been on social media lately? Anyone? Lying tongue, haughty eyes, a heart that devises wicked plans. Man, you could work for a political party of your choice if you're good at that stuff. So with that said, okay, I'm in enough trouble. So a society built on greed and lust cannot survive for long. It will destroy itself. I saw a good description that following World War II is when America becomes the lone superpower. Not lone because of Soviet Union, but work with me here. What happened there is America became the producer of the world. Like we had to rebuild Europe after World War II. So we produced everything. Now we consume everything. That's a big difference, isn't it? And it's not sustainable. Well, chase that rabbit another day. Judgment reaffirmed. So verses 5 to 9. Ezekiel writes, thus says the Lord God, disaster after disaster, behold, it comes. An end has come. The end has come. It has awakened against you. Behold, it comes. Your doom has come to you, O inhabitants of the land. The time has come. The day is near, a day of tumult, not of joyful shouting on the mountains. Now I will soon pour out my wrath upon you and spend my anger against you and judge you according to your ways, and I will punish you for all your abominations. My eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. I will punish you according to your ways, while your abominations are in your midst. Then you will know that I am the Lord who strikes. If you're a careful reader, you may notice something. I wrote Judgment Reaffirmed because it's almost, in some places, a verbatim repetition of what we read in the first 4 verses. So let me show you the list that I came up with using the English Standard Version. I didn't go into Hebrew, although I could do that, but my Hebrew isn't good enough. I've got a commentary that did all this for me, but I just did it in the English. Notice verse 2 speaks of an end and the end. That's repeated in verse 6. Come upon in verse 2 and 7. My anger is repeated. Abomination is repeated. My eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. I will punish you for your ways, and while your abominations are in your midst. All of that is repeated. And so it's like Ezekiel said something, and then he just immediately said it again in mostly the same words. If you have teenagers, you know exactly what it is, why he would do that, right? You say something, and then you repeat it in mostly the same words. When I coach, I found myself doing this, is I would explain a drill, and then I would just regurgitate what we were doing again. It's like right over the head. But he does that here. Now, he does it because of emphasis. Remember, many of the Jews at this time believed there is no way the Lord would do this in Zion. Because to them, this contradicts the promises of the Bible. And Ezekiel is saying, no, this is precisely what Moses told you that would happen. But look in particular, verse 7. He says, your doom has come to you, O inhabitant of the land. The time has come, the day is near, a day of tumult, not of joyful shoutings on the mountains. Now remember what happens on the mountains, which he condemned in chapter 6. The mountains, the high places, are locations of pagan worship. And part of this pagan worship are supposed to be joyous occasions that were often involved wild things. I don't know what language to use. But they were often sexual in nature. And so what you thought was going to be a joyous occasion of pleasure and worship, God is going to turn your gladness in the morning, your pleasure into sorrow. So you're not going to be any joyful shouting on the mountains anymore, because many of you are going to be dead. In fact, remember last week he says you'll find human bones grinded up around the altars. So it's not animal bones that are offered in sacrifice. You will fall in judgment there at the altars, crying out to your gods to come deliver you when it is your God who is defeating you, destroying you. Good luck. You've trusted in these puny gods. See if they help you now. Well, let's end here with judgment completed. Verses 10 to 27. Ezekiel writes, behold the day. Behold, it comes. Notice again, present and future. Your doom has come. The rod has blossomed. Pride has budded. Violence has grown up into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, nor their abundance, nor their wealth. Neither shall there be preeminence among them. The time has come, the day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is upon all their multitude. For the seller shall not return to what he has sold while they live. For the vision concerns all the multitude. It shall not turn back, and because of his iniquity, none can maintain his life. They have blown the trumpet and made everything ready, but none goes to battle. For my wrath is upon all the multitude. The sword is without, pestilence and famine are within. He who is in the field dies by the sword. Him who is in the city, famine and pestilence devour. And if any survivor escape, they will be on the mountains like doves of the valleys, all of them moaning, each one over his iniquity. All hands are feeble, all knees turn to water. It's the verse I was referencing earlier, Lane. They put on sackcloth, and horror covers them. Shame is on all faces, and baldness on their heads. They cast their silver into the streets, and their gold is like an unclean thing. Their silver and gold are not able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. They cannot satisfy their hunger or fill their stomachs with it, for it was the stumbling block of their iniquity. His beautiful ornament they used for pride, and they made their abominable images and their detestable things of it. Therefore I make it an unclean thing to them. I will give it into the hands of foreigners for prey, and to the wicked of the earth for spoil, and they shall profane it. I will turn my face from them, and they shall profane my treasured place. Robbers shall enter and profane it. Forge a chain, for the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence. I will bring the worst of the nations to take possession of their houses. I will put an end to the pride of the strong, and their holy places shall be profaned. When anguish comes, they will seek peace, but there shall be none. Disaster comes upon disaster, rumor follows rumor. They seek a vision from the prophet, while the law perishes from the priests and counsel from the elders. The king mourns, the prince is wrapped in despair. The hands of the people of the land are paralyzed by terror. According to their way I will do to them, and according to their judgments I will judge them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Now we can't look at every bit of that, but quite the tour de force, isn't it? Okay, so Ezekiel now shows us how the inhabitants of Judah are going to respond to the arrival of the Babylonians. You know, you look up, you see a large army outside your window. You start making some choices in your life, don't you? I still remember one of the biggest pagans in my high school on 9/11 had a lot of questions about Jesus in 2001. It's amazing what happens when your own frailty, your own mortality is, you're confronted with it. So I want you to notice what God does is he says, okay, here let's present the best of the best, what you have that's going to spare you, and none of it's going to help. Start with the first one. Your wealth is of no help. I don't think I have this as a list. No. Your wealth is of no help. This is verses 10 to 13. I want to highlight verse 10 just because it's a difficult verse to interpret. He describes the rod that has blossomed. A lot of debate over that. I'm not going to solve this for you. What does he mean by that? I don't know. It reminds you of the story of Aaron's rod budding, but that's a good thing in Numbers. This is a bad thing here. So he seems to be hyperlinking a story, but inverting it. I don't know. There's a lot of ink spilled over that little verse. But regardless, what comes from it is a branch of violence called a rod of wickedness. And it produces a rod of wickedness. But in the end, verses 11 to 13, God says he will wipe away their abundance, their wealth, and their preeminence. They will not be able to buy their way out of judgment, nor spare themselves. Whether wealthy or poor, they're going to come under the judgment of God. This is something that wealthy nations convince themselves of. This actually is really insightful for us as Americans, because this happens in the Old Testament. King Ahab, one of the more wicked kings, Jezebel's his wife, Israel had a strong economy, great military, and the Lord just brought it all crashing down. We're guilty of this as Americans. We think what we care about most as Americans is our economy. If our economy is good, we convince ourselves our nation is safe and good. But we're rotten to the core, frankly, if we're honest with ourselves. And a strong economy and a strong military will only spare you for so long. It will crash. It will crash inevitably. Let's say your population stops growing. That's something. When you have more people retiring than you have people working. That your economy is hanging by a thread. Things seem to be great, but really it's fragile. By the way, the Soviet Union experienced this. Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, was really wise, and he said that we can outspend them. You remember Star Wars, with President Reagan. The whole point of that is say, let's see if they can do it. And then they realize, well, we just can't keep up. Our economy won't allow us. We've given the projection of power, but we can't really do this. By the way, this does show up in in Revelation, rather. Remember, this is describing Babylon, the fall of Babylon. And there is this convergence of power and economic might and all, and religious influence and all that. Here's the economic side. The merchants who gained wealth from her, that is Babylon, will stand far off, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple, scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels and pearls. For in a single hour, all this wealth has been laid waste. I would remind you how easy this is when all of our money is digital, by the way. How does that encourage you? The minute the lights go out, our economy is no more. In a single hour, it can happen in a single second for us. If you don't believe me, anyone remember COVID? Couldn't find toilet paper, could you? At least that's what you were afraid of. We start to get real panicky because we weren't producing anything as a country. We were consumers. Yeah, Don? Yeah. Oil is a fascinating example because it is the lifeblood of everything. Cuba. Cuba has no power right now. Yeah. And that's actually, and that's where Ezekiel goes right next. Is he says, you think your economy is going to save you. Your economy will not save you when the Babylonians, the barbarians, are at the gates. You can't say, yeah, but let's trade. They don't want trade. They don't want your market. They want your land. They want to take possession. They'll run your economy for you. Yeah, Don? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned military. That's where it goes, verse 14 to 18. So if your wealth isn't going to help, you can't. Your economy is not going to save you. What about your military? And this is verses 14 to 15. Ezekiel warns that Israel's military will be impotent in the day of battle. So verse 14, for example, notice they have blown the trumpet, made everything ready. No one goes to battle. Well, that's not going to help you. For one, your soldiers aren't going to be paid. No economy. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing, ain't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the, you get worship wrong, get it all wrong. Right. Right, yeah. Notice there, verse 15, it's the same pattern, sword, pestilence, famine. So, sword without, pestilence, famine within. Because, so if again, we talked about this, if you lay siege of a city, the advantage of that is you can cut off their water supply, you can burn their fields, or you can just take the produce of their fields for yourself, and you can sit out there and play Monopoly all hours of the day, and the people inside will just die of starvation. And you don't have to swing a sword or nothing. And so what you get, actually, when the Babylonians come, and the Syrians did the same thing, city by city, they just surrender. When Alexander the Great was taken over, that's basically what Jerusalem and Samaria did, is they came and like, okay, we're on your side now. Like, we can't fight against you. So we're Greeks now, yay. That's basically how Alexander and others just conquer, is you show up with a large army, your options are limited. You can resist and starve to death, or you can surrender, and hopefully they're really nice to you. Warfare is just ugly. So verse 17 highlights that the reason they can't defend themselves is they become physically paralyzed. So just highlight again, Lane, this is the verse. All hands are feeble. So they're not very good with the sword. All knees turn to water. That may be a reference to the losing control of one's bladder. It's a matter of fear here, because we don't translate it that way. And of course, 18, sackcloth, baldness are signs of humiliation. We saw that a few chapters ago. So your economy isn't going to save you. Your sword, your military is not going to save you. What do you have left? Verses 19 to 22, what you have, what I've described as your relics cannot protect you. And I mentioned relics because it's false religion, yes, but it's the expression of false religion through relics and traditional practices. Now, there is some debate as to what's being described here, but I'm going to go, and I understand there's some complications with this. I think for the most part, what he's describing is how the Babylonians come in, sack Jerusalem, and go into the temple and steal all of its gold and all of its furniture. So let me show you this in the Bible, 2 Kings 25. The pillars of bronze that were in the house of the Lord, the stands of the bronze sea that were in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans, Babylonians, broke in pieces and carried the bronze to Babylon. They took away the pots and the shovels, the snuffers and the dishes for incense, all the vessels of bronze used in the temple service. Fire pans, also bowls. Was the gold the captain of the guard took away his gold. The silver as silver. The 2 pillars, the 1 sea stands Solomon made for the house of the Lord. The bronze of all these vessels was beyond weight. And you can just keep going. And so this is a desecration of the temple. This is not going to be the first. This is the first, but not the last time something like this happens in the temple. The Romans will do something similar later on, as will the Greeks. But anyways, so what you have described here are a lot of the relics, referencing gold and silver and stuff like that. We'll come back to this. His beautiful ornament there in verse 20. They turn into abominable images, so on and so forth. Notice verse 22, I will turn my face from them. So God he's going to I'm not even going to watch. Go ahead and do what you want. They shall profane my treasured place. Robbers shall enter and profane it. I think that's what's being described here. And so, but the idea is, okay, your economy's not any good. Your military's not going to help you. What you can do is these idols that you've turned to as relics or as idols, they're not going to save you. So your religious practices, your paganism won't save you. Well, later, when Daniel is in Babylon, of course, Ezekiel is in Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, all of them. Daniel witnesses when Belshazzar, what does he do? He brings out the gold. He gets drunk, and when you get drunk, you get stupid. I think that's pretty clear. Here's a good example of this. Belshazzar commanded that the vessels of gold and of silver that had been taken out of the temple of Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. They drank wine, praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So this is added mockery to us. Of course, what happens? Yeah, he gone. Yeah. And it's a good point that, remember, Ezekiel has the wild visions in Babylon. Remember the cherubim and all that crazy, the aliens. And the point is that God isn't limited to this block of land we call Israel. God is with his people even in captivity. And God's judgment against the wicked is wherever he finds them, including in Babylon. Belshazzar, okay, you've crossed a line here. I tolerated that because my people needed to be washed new. Yes. But you've crossed the line and judgment's coming and he's dead that night. It's the Persians who sneak in. And by the way, we know something like this happened with Belshazzar. I want to highlight verse 20, his beautiful ornament. There's some debate about this. I'll tell you where I land now, but I'm probably wrong. That may be a reference to the Ark of the Covenants. Again, it's a matter of debate. But what's interesting is Ezekiel, I don't know if you all, when you get bored, if you go online, watch all the documentaries about people looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Have you done this? I know you have. You're watching your Tic-Tac videos, wanting to see, have we found it? I know it's in Ethiopia. I don't know if it's in Ethiopia. They won't let me go look at it. But the Bible isn't very clear. Was it destroyed or did it survive? Ezekiel kind of hints it was destroyed. Jeremiah kind of hints it was destroyed. But then you can look at other passages that say otherwise. Yeah, but so is the temple. But you can still go to the temple. Oh, well, I mean, what's left of it. So I don't know. There's a lot of things from the Bible I'd love for us to discover. The Ark of the Covenant would be cool. It wouldn't be at the top of my list. Yeah. I mean, Isaiah, they just wiped out, the angel of the Lord just wiped out all the Syrian army. And we know that happened. Now, Isaiah has his perspective, but these Syrians come so far and then they go back. And we have the writings of Tiglath-Pileser, if my mind's certainly right, where he brags about the cities in Israel he captured, but not the one he was after. And so we know something like that happened. Josephus backs that up as well. Okay, so verse 23, 27 is just a summary. Because of all this, so your gods aren't going to help you, your military's not going to help you, your economy's not going to help you. What is the result? Slavery and death, verse 23. God will use the worst of the nations to judge his people, verse 24. That's what Habakkuk struggled with. Everyone, including kings and princes, will suffer, so no one's going to be exempt from this. Remember what happens is that the king of Jerusalem, the king of Judah, will watch his sons be slaughtered, and then his eyes are plucked out and sent into captivity. The last thing he sees on earth is the murder of his children. And judgment is, again, active and passive. So I read this in light of America, and I think it is convicting. We have placed our safety, security, and our longevity in our economy, in our military, in our paganism. And it can very easily come crashing down. The answer for us is the same as the answer for those in the day of Ezekiel, and that is to repent and believe the gospel. Yeah, Don, the other Don. they're really getting it's a good mixture of the active and passive judgments, in that the barbarians came to the gates and they let them in. And so if you go to Europe and Asia, China, Japan in particular, their birth rates. So China, for example, who had the one-child policy because they were convinced they couldn't feed all their people. Well, now they are wanting you to have 3 or 4 kids. In fact, they are taxing contraceptives and banning it in some places. There's cultural shame that comes if you are a young woman and it's not married and pregnant, but it's not going to be enough. The damage is too far gone. And really, when it comes to China, this is China's century that will not last because of their population problem. What Europe has done is they realize they have a population problem. How do you fix what is the immediate solution to the population problem? It is something called immigration. But immigration it is like playing with fire. Because you assume immigrants will buy into your culture. But when you bring in a large number of immigrants from a very different culture, worldview, they will congregate and they will have kids. Muslims in particular are having 4 or 5 kids, and Europe, and I would say a lot of Americans, become so secular they cannot think theologically. So you can talk to people in England. You can say you understand that it is the theological, eschatological goal of Islam to conquer the world. If it comes by violence, so be it. If it comes by outbreeding you, then so be it. They want only Muslims to run the world. And they'll say, yeah, but my neighbor's really nice. Because they can't think in terms of theological values and worldview or eschatology. Let's all get together, light a candle, sing Coca-Cola theme song. So Europe is in real trouble. Real trouble. Can I just throw this out? Here's the most controversial thing I say. We are worried about Iran getting a nuclear bomb, rightly so. But what do you do when the Islamic world takes over an already nuclear power? England, France. Yeah, now that I don't know about. I haven't seen that, yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, I guarantee that. So in the end, I don't want to scare you, but I do think we as Christians should have prophetic eyes. We have prophetic eyes because of God's revelation. That we can see certain patterns, and I think we can predict the future. We can. What's that? Oh, yeah. I think if you go back 30 years and read what Christians were warning about today, you're going to see this quite precedent. And it's because humanity hasn't changed. We can change the external, humans can't change the internal. And we follow the same pattern of behavior. Paganism takes you down the same path every time it's tried. Righteousness takes you down the same path every time it's tried. Yeah. And we have chosen as a nation paganism. We have. And there are certain consequences of that. However, my hope is, I think the church remains in America. And our hope, through our prayers and through our petitions and through evangelism and faithfulness, the Lord can turn things around. He's done before. Josiah, I believe, was a historical figure, and Israel changed. I believe that can happen. The church began with 12 very confused people and took over Rome in 300 years. But I do want to encourage you that you and I will unlikely see any change in our lifetimes. But we're not living to see change in our lifetime. One of the great things about Christian Europe, if I could use that phrase, is that the great cathedrals, if you travel around Europe, all over Europe, you get these majestic cathedrals. Those things took 300 to 500 years to build. And fathers who spent every day building that knew he was working on something that he would never see, nor would his children. But because he believed in the providential grace of God and the beauty of the gospel, he knew that his descendants one day would. So long as he kept swinging the hammer. That's what we want to build as Christians. The world is ugly now, but Christ will triumph in the end. What do we have to do? We got to love our spouses, raise our kids, and have as many as we can, and be the sort of citizens and care for the welfare of the city. And I'm confident by God's grace, things are not the way we would like for them to be, but God is still on his throne. All right, we've gone over time. We miss